To say it's been a busy week in our politics would be an understatement, but perhaps the question that we ought to be asking right now is, what happens next? Yes, President Trump has been acquitted by the Senate on his impeachment charges, but as he made clear today, the president is not ready to move past impeachment just yet. Now, the White House threatening to prosecute John Bolton or investigate him at the very least. They claim he mishandled classified intel, some of which may have ended up in the manuscript for his book. At the same time, Democrats in the House, they're hinting they may again subpoena Bolton or ask him to testify, despite yesterday's acquittal in the Senate. And the Trump revenge tour may yet reach the Bidens. Some Senate Republicans now threatening to investigate or even subpoena Hunter Biden. At the same time, backers of Joe Biden may also be asking themselves what's next. That after the vice president's distant fourth-place finish in Iowa, which netted him 0 convention delegates, or his campaign handlers stopping Biden from being Biden. We've got the perfect guest to get into both of these topics, Nelson Cunningham. He's a former federal prosecutor who also served as legal counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The chairman, while he served, none other than Joe Biden. Cunningham is also a volunteer advisor to the Biden campaign. Nelson, thanks for the time.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Obviously, this first question, there's the political component to it, but then there's also clearly the investigatory one. I guess Democrats got to make a decision whether or not the Bolton book tour will take care of the questions that they still want answered, if in fact it'll happen. Conversely, the chances that, and it's politically fraught on both sides, I guess, that Hunter Biden could be called in as a witness in the Senate. It's not over yet. How do you think both of those principal figures play out?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt that while Adam Schiff ran a very professional and top-notch investigation, because of the time constraints he was put under by Speaker Pelosi and the House leadership, he left a lot on the table in his investigation. He did not go to court. He did not pursue the thousands or tens of thousands of text messages and emails that are sitting on government servers that could have filled in so much of what happened in the days and weeks surrounding this summer and this fall's activities. He didn't go to court to compel the hostile witnesses to come testify, to compel John Bolton, to compel Mulvaney, to compel people at OMB who could have explained how this hold on the military aid was actually executed and on whose instructions. He didn't do that. So, and the argument was he didn't have time. I might disagree with that because there are ways to speed up investigations and to get judges to rule on your timetable, not on theirs. But nevertheless, it's where Schiff is right now. I think it's a shame for history for us to have access to those emails, to the witnesses who could shed so much light on what has happened. Democrats can clearly go ahead and begin issuing subpoenas to them and pursue them in court under their investigative powers and their oversight powers. No question about that. No question the administration would fight them on it. But I think ultimately, no question, Schiff and his people would prevail if they went to court. But here's the question. Is it worth the political price for them to do so? If they continue to press this matter in the courts and with their own continuing investigations, they risk seeming like sore losers. They risk stretching out what has turned out to be at least a political stalemate for Democrats. They thought they were going to come out way ahead on impeachment. I don't think it worked out that way. They have to decide, do we drop this matter now and leave it to others to uncover this evidence in due time, or do we go ahead and pursue it? That's a tough political question in my judgment.
And the scarier thing to me, Nelson, is even if they get compelling testimony from Bolton or from some of the others from OMB or even from the administration, will it change one mind in the U.S. Senate? And I don't want to even think of the answer, but I think I've already learned it by what we've seen here in the last few weeks on Capitol Hill.
Look, as a prosecutor, as someone who spent 6 years going in front of juries and investigating complex cases and proving them in court, I can tell you this. What changes minds is not the testimony of friendly witnesses. Is not the testimony of friendly witnesses. It is physical evidence and it's the testimony of hostile witnesses, people who you would not expect to be testifying against the person under investigation. Look at the Nixon example, which I keep on coming back to. For 18 months, there had been testimony before the Congress that Richard Nixon had directed the cover-up. So sorry, I talked too much. It's an occupational hazard. For 18 months, people have been testifying that Richard Nixon was covering up Watergate and was directing the CIA to tell the FBI to back off. For 18 months. On the day before the Supreme Court's decision in that case, ordering the turning over of the tapes, only one Republican had come out in favor of impeachment in the House. And within 2 weeks, Richard Nixon was gone. What caused him to be gone? Tapes that had his own voice telling the CIA to tell the FBI to back off. The testimony for 18 months didn't change a single mind. One tape changed every mind in the House and the Senate on that. I don't know what's sitting in those servers. I don't know what emails are there, but I can tell you this. It's a lot harder to pretend that nothing happened and to do this, blah, 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 if there's actual physical evidence in front of you that contradicts the story that's been put up by the president's observers. So I think it could have changed minds, certainly if they'd done it months ago. Will it change minds going ahead? Well, it's going to be up to the voters to decide now, and they're the minds that I'm looking to change.
Well, let me speak about those voters. As I mentioned here, in a volunteer capacity, you're serving as a surrogate for Joe Biden. He had a tough Iowa. There's been this, I thought it was a very emotional and very real conversation he had where he talked about the challenges that he dealt with as a young person with a stutter and reminded people about the unscripted, empathetic Joe Biden. Do you think his campaign would be better served if they kind of took some of the handcuffs off him and let him go basically in front of the voters a lot more and take direct questions, including difficult ones? Maybe a lot of people say that's what hurt him in Iowa.
Well, I was in Iowa this past weekend. I was there for 4 days, including up through Monday night's caucuses, and I helped manage the voters in one of the caucuses. I'll be going up to New Hampshire this weekend to be stumping for the vice president there, and later in the month I'll be in South Carolina for that primary. I'm not speaking as a surrogate for the campaign. I'm giving you my own opinions. My own opinion is that Joe Biden is one of the most charismatic and elemental politicians when he is unleashed on a room full of voters. He knows how to connect. He has the empathy, as you pointed out, talking personally about his challenges with stuttering and with young people. He is moving and compelling. He is a very smart politician. He understands, as he said this week, this was a gut punch, what happened in Iowa. He now has the ability to show us that he can go ahead and connect with the voters in a place like New Hampshire, connect with the voters in the other contests coming up ahead, and show us that he's still the politician he's been. Now, there's a challenge here, which is that the contests coming up are not fair and open contests. New Hampshire, you got Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are native sons and daughters from right next door. That's going to skew the results. Joe Biden goes there, and he's facing Bernie Sanders, who got 60% of the vote 4 years ago in his fight against Hillary Clinton, 22 points more than she did. Elizabeth Warren is from next door. The week after that, you have another caucus in Nevada. Caucuses are thoroughly undemocratic and frankly unfair ways to gauge voter sentiment. I spoke to voters this past weekend in Iowa, and a mother would answer the door with a baby here and a toddler here and the dog trying to escape. And you'd say to her, "Hey, are you going to caucus for Joe Biden?" And she'd look at you as though you were insane. She had no time in her week to spend 3 hours caucusing for anybody. We need to get to a place that we don't have a skewed election. We don't have caucuses, which I think do not fairly reflect the voter sentiments. The next contest we're going to have that are going to be fair and open are going to be in South Carolina, on February 29th, which is an open primary in a state that is as diverse and broad as you'll find in America. And then 3 days after that on Super Tuesday, when California and Texas and North Carolina and other important states vote. I think we're going to have to wait 4 weeks until we begin to understand how actual voters react to Joe Biden or, frankly, the other candidates in unbiased and open settings. So in this case, the first contests are not going to live up to their original job, which is to winnow down the candidates. I think they're going to leave us all questioning for another 4 weeks.
And the question is, 4 weeks can be a lifetime if patients will survive till South Carolina, but we will see. Nelson Cunningham, I really appreciate the time, and good luck in New Hampshire. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, everyone, when we come back, even as the confusion continues after those Iowa caucuses, and they were a hot mess, Democrats seeking the White House, they've invaded New Hampshire, where our guest is heading up to. Well, we're going to go there live next here. We're going to be talking about which candidates are looking good ahead of Tuesday's primary and why some Democrats surging while others seem to be losing ground.